Deku? I think he's some pro. By clouds. My head in the clouds, not coming down. Chapter 84. Tracker. Group message. Mr. Brave.
Hey, I heard an SOS and it mentioned UA. At Eraserhead. Is everybody okay?
Miss Joke. Sho, when someone asks you a question, you're supposed to respond. Sho? Sir Nighteye. I'm sure they're fine. If something had happened, Deku would have informed us. Mr. Brave.
You see, I know you're right, but now I'm panicking, and my brain is trying to convince me that they're not responding because something happened to the both of them.
Miss Joke. Stop worrying, I'll text him. And if he's still being dumb, maybe Shinso will have his phone on him. Goodness knows the kid's sleep schedule is messed up enough that he'll be awake. Mr. Brave.
Guys? An article just dropped saying that the training camp was attacked. It says a student was abducted. Are we sure they're okay?
Sir Nighteye. They've survived villain attacks in the past. We have to trust them that they can take care of it themselves. Mr. Brave.
At Miss Joke. Any luck contacting anyone? Great. Now she's not responding either. Are we just slowly getting picked off one by one?
Miss Joke. Sorry. I just got off the phone with Shinso and Sho. Sir Nighteye.
And?
Miss Joke. Deku's gone. Izuku wasn't alone when he woke up, but it would have been better if he had been. It wasn't as if Kurogiri was doing anything violent or disturbing. He was just cleaning glasses at what looked like a bar. But it would have been a lot easier to plan, or better yet, attempt an escape, if he wasn't being watched. The room he was being kept in had several doors, but even if he hadn't been tied up and unable to get to them, Izuku had no way of knowing which one, if any, led outside, and choosing the wrong one could get him hopelessly lost and trap him further. Not that he was in any condition to be running or fighting right now, of course. He had a splitting headache from the after effects of the gas he'd been exposed to, and the marble he'd stuffed in his shoe was dragging painfully into his foot. Which was ironically comforting, considering that it meant the League hadn't managed to find it yet. A quick scuffle in his chair was enough to figure out that the few weapons he'd had on him when he was abducted hadn't gotten the same treatment. Kurogiri caught him squirming and stopped to glare at him. There's no point struggling. Those knots are far too tight. They're not going anywhere. Izuku huffed and gave a final tug at the ropes. Yeah, sure, but hey, as long as I'm here, mind telling me why? I already told you guys I don't want one of your boss's stupid quirks, and pretty much every single one of my classmates is stronger than I am, and it would make a bigger splash than news. Not to mention some of them are rich and would make much better ransom victims. Why go for the quirkless kid? Kurogiri sighed and set down the glass he was wiping. I'll be honest with you, young man. I have no idea. Young Tomura would much rather have murdered you in your sleep than bring you here. Izuku gulped. getting kidnapped was the better option? He was lucky? Somehow, it didn't feel like it. It wasn't Tomura, however, that gave the order for your abduction, Kurogiri continued. It was Sensei. Sensei? Izuku breathed. All for one. Why would he want me? I have no idea. Kurogiri picked his glass back up. But I would recommend not fighting too hard against it, whatever it is. Sensei has a talent for getting his way. Izuku fell silent. This was bad. Well, it was always going to be bad, considering that getting kidnapped was awful, but if it really was All for One who had given the order, then Izuku was screwed. Even if Eraser and the others managed to find out about the tracker, they may not be in time to rescue him. He was screwed. One of the doors opened, and he made a note that that particular door was not an exit, as Shigaraki strode in.
So, the little brat's awake, huh? High time for the game to start. I was getting bored.
Izuku glared at him, but didn't say anything as Shigaraki came up to him.
So, not so high and mighty now, are ya? None of your stupid classmates are here to back you up this time.
He couldn't help flinching when Shigaraki raised his hand and slapped him across the face. Thankfully with only 4 fingers, but Izuku knew what the point was. It was a threat. A demonstration of total control and power. I can kill you at any time, and there's nothing you can do to stop me.
I'd say stop playing with the brat, but it's fun to watch him flinch.
Darby smirked as he followed Shigaraki into the room.
Hey, do you think the kid already has burn scars?
I mean, he grew up with that Bakugo brat, so probably, Magne said, walking in. He's annoying enough that if I went to school with him, I'd probably beat him up myself.
Hear that, brat?
Shigaraki gave him an unhinged grin.
Everyone here just wants to see you suffer. How does it feel to be completely alone?
Izuku didn't give him the satisfaction of seeing him flinch again. I'm used to it. Darby snorted.
Yeah, you should be. So, Dusty, can we kill him yet? Not until Sensei gives permission.
Shigaraki shot a glance towards an old TV in the corner.
But I informed him our mission was a success. Mostly. We lost most of our recruits, and all we have to show for it is one useless kid. Darby grumbled. Yeah, sounds real successful to me.
The villains all snapped to attention as a scratchy voice echoed out of the TV.
All is not what it seems at first. Perhaps young Deku will still surprise us.
Izuku's eyes widened, and he had to work to calm his breathing. As he whispered, All for one. Ochako hadn't stopped crying since they'd gotten the news that Deku had been kidnapped, and Himiko hadn't the heart to leave her side. Sure, they'd survived, but when it really mattered, they'd been too late to save him to save anyone. Their wounds were treated, backup had arrived, and most of the villains had been captured. It should have been something to celebrate. But instead, It just felt empty. That idiot. Ochako wiped her eyes furiously. I swear, if he doesn't survive, I'll kill him. Himiko giggled. Get in line. I think Aizawa's gonna want a piece of him first. It was brave of him to sacrifice himself like that, Sue said. I just wish he hadn't had to. Well, he did! Ochako snapped. I'm sorry, Sue. It's just... Deku's my friend. I don't want him to get hurt or... Himiko clapped her hands together abruptly. You know what we need right now? Ochako huffed. An infinite supply of ice cream? A plan to save Deku? Sue added. Well, yes to both of those things, but no. Himiko forced an excited smile on her face. What we need is a distraction. Get moving, feel useful. Doing what? Ochako's shoulders slumped. Recovery Goal said we weren't supposed to do anything too strenuous, which means helping clean up is out, and what else are we supposed to do, huh? It feels wrong to just sit and do our nails or something. Sue nodded, and Himiko frowned. Well, I guess... Oh, that might work. Ochako looked at her suspiciously. What? Himiko shook her head. You know that training exercise I was doing with Deku? You mean the one where you turned into us and chased him around the forest? Sue asked bluntly. Himiko giggled sadly. Yeah, that one. Well, when we were deciding what to do, the Pussycats made us promise that we'd try to leave no trace, which meant that we couldn't leave any of the trackers. Deku got most of them, but we could probably go around and collect the rest since, well, you know, since he's not around to do it himself. Ochako took a deep breath and nodded. Yeah, okay. It's better than just sitting here being anxious. She shrugged. Let's hop to it. Perfect! Togo pulled out her phone. I didn't look because that would be cheating and super not cute, but Eraser gave me a list of where he hid them all. The villains weren't gentle as they forced him through the portal. Darby grabbed him by the hair and dragged him, chair and all, to the inky black spot on the floor, and Izuku had to resist the urge to shout as he fell into the new location, grimacing in pain as the chair tipped and he fell hard onto his side.
I would give apologies for my tormentor's behavior, a chilling voice said. But if you had just been a little bit more polite, maybe he would like you more.
Izuku put on a brave face as he turned to All for One, who was terrifying in an unbeatable cyborg kind of way, even if it looked like he was on life support. He glared at where his eyes should have been. Sorry. Being nice to villains hasn't exactly been that high on my priorities list. Of course. All for One sighed.
I suppose you've been rather busy training to be a hero, and writing anonymous articles. Yes, I know about those. Like Kurogiri said, I have a talent for getting my way.
Izuku froze. He supposed it made sense for All for One to know about them, considering that He hadn't really made a lot of moves to hide it. But what was more surprising was the fact that he seemed annoyed. He wiggled slightly to get a bit more comfortable. Of all the things I've done to get in your way, I would have thought that one would be pretty tame. Shouldn't you be happy about Hero Society getting torn down? His breath caught as All For One turned to him, and he had no idea if the terror he felt was the result of a quirk, or if All For One's presence was really just that strong.
You know that the system creates its own villains, boy. Why would I want to destroy what works?
But Izuku's mouth was dry. But Shigaraki
wants to destroy All Might and the society he represents. Yes.
All For One nodded.
But, unlike your precious little critiques, I can easily point Shigaraki where I want him to go, which makes him useful. Would you like to be useful, Deku?
Deku swallowed.
Not to you.
Why? Were you hoping to convince me? You're gonna have to try harder. All For One grinned.
Oh, I've barely begun. We can use Search to find him, right? Vlad asked. We recovered Ragdoll before those villains were able to abduct her.
It's not that simple. Mandalay sighed. Yes, Pixie Bob technically recovered her, but the villain who tried to take her trapped her in a marble, and we haven't been able to reverse the effects yet.
Can't Eraser just cancel his quirk? All Might asked. Taking away his quirk should free her, correct? We've already tried that, Shota said tiredly. But while I was able to cancel his ability to create new marbles, my quirk doesn't always affect the effects of a quirk. For example, even if I erased Todoroki's quirk, the glacier he just made wouldn't instantly melt. We were hoping this would be an actively activated quirk, like Warp Gate, but
it seems as though our dear Ragdoll is trapped until we can convince Mr. Compress to free her. Nezu finished. Which we are working on, but I believe we can all agree that shouldn't be our only plan of action. And that doesn't even begin to address how we are going to spin this for the media. The door slammed open, and the heroes jumped to their feet, ready for a fight, only slightly relaxed when they realized it was just Toga. Uraraka and Asui followed close behind her, and to Shota's confusion, all three had wide, almost hopeful grins on their faces.
Himiko, we're in the middle of a meeting, Vlad scolded. I know you're still working on getting a hang of social skills, but you can't just barge in here while we're working on a case.
Does it count as barging if I have information on the case? Toga asked. Probably, but oh well.
Wait.
Shota straightened up in his seat.
You have information. Why didn't you already tell Sakauchi during your interrogation?
Because we didn't have it yet, Sue said bluntly. And what information did you uncover? Nezu asked curiously. Uraraka didn't seem like she could hold it in anymore, as she blurted, "One of the trackers is missing." The heroes looked at each other, and Nezu rested his chin on his paws as he leaned forward. Trackers? Would you care to explain? Deku was supposed to find those little tracker marble things while Toga was hunting him, right? Uraraka bounced in place, Well, we had a couple left, so we were out collecting them, but one of them wasn't there. And it was the one closest to camp, so if he managed to grab it on his way out... Shota stamped down on a tiny spark of hope before it could hurt him.
How do you know he didn't collect it earlier and forget to check it off the list?
The girls deflated, and Shota felt terrible as Toga scuffed the floor with her toe. We hadn't thought about it.
Well, you've got the rest of them, right, Eraser?
Tiger asked after a long moment.
We can see if it's really missing.
Shota nodded. Counting all the marbles took a few minutes, and it felt like they were wasting their time with such a ridiculous task. Shota wanted to scream, but if there was even the slightest chance that this could lead them to Deku, then he owed it to the kid to investigate, right? It was his fault that the problem child had gotten kidnapped in the first place, after all. If he'd just stayed with him instead of going off to save the others, the kid would still be there. We're still one short, right? Pixie Bob asked. Eraser, you can track the signal? Shota took out his phone, preparing for the signal to show up in the woods. There were a million possibilities for why this one marble could be missing. A crow might have stolen it, or he wrote down the wrong location on Toga's cheat sheet. Hell, even the wind could have rolled it away. Rolling it all the way to Kamino Ward, however, was a bit of a stretch. Shota gave a terrifying grin as he looked up.
Good work, girls. It looks like Deku didn't give up without a fight after all.
Chapter 85. Plans. By the time Izuku got back to the bar, he was exhausted and felt like he was about to black out. All for One had apparently decided before kidnapping him that bribing him with a quirk wouldn't work. Which was correct, of course, but it meant that he had to decide to use pain and fear as an alternative. Which was not great. Izuku had at least hoped to be able to find some weakness during his time with the symbol of evil, but unlike most people, All for One hadn't underestimated his pain tolerance. Either that, or he'd just decided to screw it and go plus ultra for fun. Shigaraki cackled as he was dumped on the floor.
How was your time with the big boss, Deku? You having fun yet?
Izuku grit his teeth, but all he could manage was a sharp hiss. The quirk All for One used to torture him was psychological, but even if it hadn't caused any physical damage, his brain and nerves were still screaming, as if every bone in his body had been broken. Dang it. Eraserhead really needed to get his act together and save him. Soon. He looked over towards the TV, knowing that All for One was probably listening in, laughing at his misery.
You really think you're interesting enough for the big guy to be watching after he's done with you?
Darby kicked him in the ribs as he sneered down at him.
Nah. The recording light's not on, which means that right now, Dusty's creepy sensei cares even less about you than we do.
Does that mean we can kill him now? Magne asked boredly. Not quite. Kurogiri, ever the voice of reason, apparently, said, You will still need Sensei's approval to do something so permanent. Perhaps he will still be able to prove his worth to us.
Yeah, right.
Shigaraki scratched his neck in annoyance.
Fine. It's only a matter of time until the big boss realizes you're dead weight anyway. So we might as well take advantage of the glitch in the system.
Darby raised an eyebrow.
Glitch?
Shigaraki was scarier when he was smiling. He crouched down so he was closer to Izuku's level and looked him in the eye.
There are lots less permanent ways to damage someone.
Shota glared as the villains were led into the conference room and restrained. They hadn't had any luck getting them to talk separately, and Shota wasn't hopeful that they'd been any more talkative if they were interrogated together. But Sakauchi had pointed out that even if they had Deku's location, they still had no idea what exactly they were walking into. They could have a second base prepared that they could warp Deku to at the slightest provocation, and it would be beyond helpful to know where that was, if it was the case. Not that they wouldn't be able to still take every step to make sure that didn't happen, but it didn't hurt to be prepared, especially since the optimal time to move wouldn't be until tonight anyway. But even if they got nothing, he was still going to rescue that stupid, self-sacrificial problem child and put him in detention as soon as possible. "If I might ask, why are we here?" Mr. Compress asked politely. "You have been giving it a valiant effort, but you should have already discovered that we have no plans to become turncoats in our organization." Nezu pressed his paws together thoughtfully. "Plans change. Tell me, how many of you are Stain's followers?"
What?
Bakugo yelled.
You're just content to sit here on your ass and do nothing? You can't honestly expect me to believe that shitty hair.
Kirishima grimaced.
Of course I'm not okay, Baku bro. I was there. I should have been able to keep him from giving himself up, but I couldn't do anything. We had all these students and villains still got him. So maybe it's better to leave it to the heroes. I can't just do that!
Bakugo's palms popped as he screamed.
Are you really expecting me to just give up on him?
Ochako sighed and took another nervous sip of her tea as she looked around the dorm common room. The two of them had been having this argument for over an hour now, with most of the class falling on one side or the other, joining in whenever things were reaching a lull or getting too heated. Ochako herself was on Bakugo's side. She hadn't been at the camp. She hadn't had a chance to save him, and now she'd probably never see him again. Might never see him again. She had to think positive.
Everyone, calm down, Ida said. Believe me, I know better than anyone how frustrating it is to not be able to save Midoriya. At least the rest of you were at camp. I was stuck here, suspended for doing the same thing that you were all discussing. In our defense, Kaminari pointed out, saving a classmate and trying to murder a guy aren't really the same thing.
They're both vigilantism, Yayosuru said. I want to save Deku. We all do. But the fact is that heroes are better equipped to handle this situation than we are. We just have to trust they'll save him.
Yes, of course.
Sarah rolled his eyes.
Let's trust the hero system to save him, when the entire media is trying to claim it was his fault that he was kidnapped.
That made everyone go quiet. Without the yelling, the soft muttering of the television filled the space, reminding them all of why they'd turned the volume down almost to mute in the first place. Ever since the news of the attack had hit the news, a lot of people had been very vocal about criticizing UA for letting him into the hero course in the first place. They didn't seem to care that he'd sacrificed himself to save his classmates. To him, his abduction was just more evidence that a quirkless kid really was too weak to be a hero. Thankfully, it wasn't everyone. Ochako didn't think she'd be able to restrain herself if it was, but there were enough people saying it, and it was controversial enough that it was bringing in high ratings for the news stations, and they kept highlighting it. She didn't pity Nezu, and whoever else had to go to the press conference tonight.
The fact remains that if you all disobey orders and go to rescue him, you will be suspended, Ida insisted. I want to save Midoriya too, but saving him now, in this way, will only keep us from being able to save people later.
Todoroki nodded. Which obviously isn't what Midoriya wants. Tsu gave a thoughtful croak, and Ochako turned towards her curiously. What is it, Tsu? You've been really quiet. Her eyes widened slightly, and she blushed.
It's kind of a dumb idea, kiddo, but did Toga-chan ever get in trouble for helping us fight Moonfish?
Ochako thought for a moment. I don't know. We could probably ask 1B, Mina pointed out. They'll probably know.
She shouldn't have, Todoroki said. Well, yeah, obviously, Zero said. But laws, dude, they don't always make sense.
Todoroki frowned.
But she's Vlad King's daughter, isn't she?
Yeah? Kirishima shrugged. What does that have to do with anything?
There are certain loopholes for children of pro-heroes, Todoroki said slowly. I thought it was common knowledge. Because we are already under hero custody, our hero parent automatically takes responsibility for our actions, and while the law doesn't say it exactly, in practice this means that we can act as a sidekick in emergency situations, even without verbal permission. Endeavor used to take me out on patrols all the time. I hated it.
Ochako blinked in shock when Yaoyorozu nodded in agreement. That's true, and even if it wasn't, I've overheard Midnight and Vlad talking about Toga a few times. She'd apparently already committed several crimes by the time he took custody of her, so her adoption doubled as a sort of redemption program, and she's actually allowed to try for a hero license if she'd like one, just so long as Vlad signs off on it. She's technically a hero in training, just like us.
Not that the vampire isn't absolutely riveting, Bakugo growled. But we need to focus on saving Deku. How is any of this going to help us get him back?
Toga-chan can use our quirks when she transforms,
Sue said, gesturing as if this conclusion should be obvious.
It's a compromise. If Toga goes on the raid, and everyone who wants to save Deku gives a few vials full of their blood, then
even if we can't be there, which is stupid, by the way, we'll still be helping to save him. Bakugo huffed. Fine. Ponytail! Make a phlebotomy kit. We're going with the frog's plan.
Aizawa still has to approve, Kirishima said, elbowing Bakugo in the ribs. Bakugo just grinned.
He won't have a choice.